policy freeze. The Supreme Court puts a U.S. environmental rule on ice for the moment after several states challenged the plan. Plus, a massive discovery of rare earth minerals in Wyoming could shake up the global markets. And federal and California state officials are teaming up in an effort to safeguard vulnerable fish in the Golden State. Hello and welcome to EarthX News, where we focus on conservation, sustainability, and the environment. I'm Christina Thompson. Let's get into some of the biggest headlines facing our planet. The U.S. Supreme Court is temporarily blocking an environmental policy designed to combat interstate air pollution. Alana Austin has that story.
The nation's highest court recently ruled 5-4 that the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, cannot enforce its Good Neighbor Plan, at least for now. Ongoing legal action is delaying the enforcement of these federal regulations, which aim to reduce air pollution drifting across state lines. The Deputy General Counsel of the EPA under the previous administration, Justin Schwab, explains the evolution of these environmental proposals.
Ozone, as we all know, can contribute to visibility problems and also can aggravate asthma. It's sort of smog, in essence. And what happened here is that to enforce the 2015 ozone air quality standard, the Clean Air Act requires all states to make sure that emissions of pollutants from sources within their borders don't interfere with downwind states' abilities to meet and keep those standards.
The states developed individual plans to rein in emissions, but last year the EPA said 23 of them had fallen short in targeting benchmarks. The agency then advanced a national plan, which led to legal challenges. This summer, the Supreme Court sided with states like Indiana, West Virginia, and Ohio, who argued the Good Neighbor Plan was likely to cause electric grid emergencies as power supplies strained to adjust to the federal plan's terms. The future of the Good Neighbor Plan remains unclear as leaders respond to concerns about environmental impacts and economic ripple effects. The High Court's recent decision now sends the case back to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit for further review. For EarthX News, I'm Alana Austin.
Alana Austin, thank you. Joining us now for more analysis on the Supreme Court's ruling, law professor at Florida International University and Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow, Mario Loyola. Professor Loyola, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us today about this. First, I'm hoping that you can explain to our viewers what the EPA's Good Neighbor Plan is.
So the Good Neighbor regulatory program is supposed to protect downwind states from upwind states, which means when one state produces pollution and it flows downstate across borders to another state downwind, the EPA has a program in place to protect the so-called downwind states from that upwind pollution. What the Good Neighbor Plan was doing in this case was essentially an attempt to impose a national set of emission standards on a whole large group of states when the EPA set its standards so low, just so unreasonably low, that half the states of the United States couldn't comply with them. And then EPA came in and federalized the implementation programs. Or to put it another way, it's imposing California's regulation of electricity production and industry on all the states. And what happened here was that those states, the affected states, the 23 states that EPA said were not complying with the new standards, sued. And the Supreme Court said that they were right and that EPA hadn't fully considered the impacts on those states if they chose to drop out of this new federalized plan.
So is the biggest issue that the states, companies, and trade associations had with the plan just that the rules were so stringent that more competitive states wouldn't be able to keep up with it?
Yeah, not just that they wouldn't be able to keep up with it, but that actually complying with the rules would threaten reliability and adequacy of their electricity grids. And there's a real danger to, these aren't just economic losses, right? I mean, deployment of solar and wind power to the Texas electricity grid made the grid so fragile that the Texas ice storm of 2021 killed several hundred people. And there comes a point when in all these climate policies, when all these climate policies that are meant to prevent human suffering and social losses in the long run are starting to cause a lot of human suffering and social losses in the here and now, we have to start asking ourselves if it's really worth it.
So, what's your reading of the court's decision?
So the court's decision was a very narrow sort of procedural decision that focused on whether EPA had adequately considered the impact on the states that didn't end up complying with the 23-state federal implementation plan. But it's sort of a canary in the coal mine in the sense that it signals in this and in other decisions that the Supreme Court and that federal courts are going to be increasingly on guard against EPA's expansive use of its authorities under the Clean Air Act and under the Clean Water Act to take over essentially state environmental policies that are supposed to be left to the states under those federal laws. And so here in this case, for example, the EPA was saying, the Supreme Court was saying, wait a second, EPA, you have to explain much better in much more detail how states are actually going to maintain their flexibility under the Clean Air Act, under the Good Neighbor Plan. And it said that, and so it's going to send EPA back to the drawing board on some of that. And it could take several months, and it could be another administration by the time EPA is ready to revise the rule.
So then what's the balance? How do we make sure that, air pollution stays under control across all the states, especially the ones downwind, but still not kind of stepping beyond what the rules in place are currently?
I think we have to return to the original conception of the Clean Air Act, and in which states have flexibility to implement federal standards in ways that allow for continued economic growth and for continued innovation and for the continued flourishing of society, which is the original vision of the Clean Air Act. And I do think that there's an emerging consensus that this has to be really driven by the states.
Professor Mario Loyola, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The U.S. House Environmental Subcommittee approved a bill that would lower funding for 2 federal agencies and limit their ability to protect the environment. The subcommittee voted to push forward a bill to weaken the regulatory capacities of the EPA, cutting funding for conservation, climate action, national parks, and environmental justice initiatives. The fiscal year 2025 bill proposes a 20% cut to the EPA's annual budget. That's a loss of almost $1 billion. It also proposes reductions to many interior agency budgets, including a $210 million cut to the National Park Service and a $144 million cut to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. After discovering some 2 billion tons of incredibly rare minerals, the U.S. has the potential to become a world leader. The discovery was made by the American Rare Earths Mining Company in Wyoming. And get this, only 25% of the land has been drilled so far. These minerals are necessary for so much of today's technology, including smartphones, hybrid cars, aircrafts, even light bulbs. Currently, 95% of Earth minerals originate from China, with the U.S. alone importing 74%. But following a ban by China for exporting minerals in December of 2023, producers have been looking for alternate mineral sources. This discovery could potentially make the U.S. a world leader in mineral mining. Let's look into some wildlife news. President Joe Biden and the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, are racing to protect vulnerable fish in the Golden State. The fish in question are the Chinook salmon and Delta smelt. The fish are struggling in warm and sluggish waters or getting caught up in the pumps of a massive public plumbing system that captures water in the wetter northern part of the state. That system supplies water across California to some 25 million citizens and the country's biggest producers of nuts, vegetables, fruit, and beef. Critics of the initiative are pushing back, citing concerns about limited water availability for farmers. President Biden and Governor Newsom are looking to finalize their rules on protecting the fish in the coming months. A species on the verge of extinction makes a big recovery. The Iberian lynx is no longer on the endangered list. In the latest update to the red list of threatened species, the wild cat is now listed as vulnerable. Conservationists are praising the improvement and attribute the comeback to successful breeding and reintroduction programs. Researchers say the numbers have gone up from 62 in 2001 to 648 in 2022. And according to a recent census, there are now more than 2,000. Plans to build the first large-scale carbon removal plant in North America are underway. Carbon dioxide removal company Equatic recently announced it started engineering designs for the facility to be built in Quebec. Equatic is one of about a dozen marine CDR companies that have sprouted in recent years in an effort to accelerate the ocean's natural capacity to absorb more CO2. This plant will remove more than 109,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and produce 3,600 tons of green hydrogen per year. It will be the largest ocean-based carbon removal plant in the world. This is a huge deal because it will remove carbon 99,000 times as fast as the ocean, which is essentially a natural sink that absorbs carbon. The technology is still quite new, and researchers do not know the environmental impacts quite yet, especially on such a large scale. But CDR can be a possible solution for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Coming up, the Earth's ozone layer may face a new threat. Satellites, stay tuned. That story is just ahead on EarthX News. Microsoft is working to yet again make the seemingly impossible possible. Their latest endeavor is to generate power from atomic fusion. Atomic fusion happens when two atoms combine to form a single, heavier one while releasing massive amounts of energy. It is the same process that powers the sun along with all other stars. The tech giant says they expect to complete the process by 2028, doubling down on their promises to transition to green energy. However, Microsoft seems to be fighting an uphill battle. Electricity consumption is increasing amid the rise of artificial intelligence, which means using fossil fuels and coal to meet public demands is still necessary. A Goldman Sachs analysis recently looked into which energies will power AI into 2030. Their analysis found that data centers will account for 8% of total electricity use in the US, nearly tripling their share today. Microsoft said that by 2030, they will have 100% of their electricity consumption matched by zero carbon energy purchases. Getting a good Wi-Fi connection may come with an environmental cost. According to a recent study, internet providing satellites may pose a threat to the ozone layer. Researchers say the debris left over from the old spacecrafts could deplete the protective barrier. Now, scientists say this is concerning since recent research suggests the ozone layer was making a comeback. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Mitchell Kirschner, space systems engineer and host of the NASA-sponsored podcast, Space Post Haste. Dr. Kirschner, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
What exactly are internet providing satellites?
Yes, of course. So you, me, most of the world, we all use internet. And the way that we now use internet in the modern day is through connecting wirelessly through satellites around the world. You may have heard about companies like SpaceX putting up space constellations or satellite groups of satellites called Starlink, which enable people to receive internet anywhere in the world where they can receive satellite coverage. So what's happening these days for internet providing satellites is we're launching thousands and thousands of more satellites into the atmosphere that will help us get internet all over the world and provide access to internet for millions and billions more people who struggle to access it today. But as a result, there will be more satellites in space than has ever been in the history of humanity. So when we take those satellites back down from Earth, they end up burning up in Earth's atmosphere and leaving particles there that could potentially harm the ozone layer.
So how threatening is that sort of process of bringing them back down to Earth for the environment?
Great question. So what happens, what the researchers published, they discussed about just the presence of aluminum left in the stratosphere, which is the highest level of the Earth's atmosphere. Right now, we do know that aluminum can remove ozone, which is a highly volatile compound that can help protect us and shield us on Earth from UV rays. So we don't want to put too much aluminum in the stratosphere, but at the same time, we don't necessarily know the effect that adding that much aluminum will have on the overall global stratospheric concentrations of those elements.
How do we stay online while still thinking about protecting the environment?
There can be innovations in strategies for returning satellites to Earth such that they don't burn up in the atmosphere and that we can either recover their elements or safely dispose of them without leaving particles in the stratosphere.
What's your hope for getting more satellites up there, for expanding technology? I know I was reading something today about how we might be even getting 6G pretty soon. So how can we continue advancing our technology in a safe way?
So my hope is that we can obtain from global networks of aerosol detecting telescopes called Aeronet, which is run by NASA, and other observation satellites that can help better understand these chemical conditions in the stratosphere. And this is also important because if we do add more aluminum and other compounds into the stratosphere, that might change the mission requirements of launches of other vehicles or burn up of other vehicles, because there will be new things they need to fly through and avoid as they enter space or exit space. So I guess in short, just lots more research.
Lots more research, always more research. Dr. Mitchell Krishner, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Stay with EarthX News. We'll be right back. A U.S. environmental group calls for international cooperation on clean energy. Caleb Park has that story.
The world has seen the devastating impacts of extreme weather around the world: flooding, hurricanes, storms, tornadoes, and earthquakes. Environmental groups call for more cooperation and coordination, something they believe can have a meaningful impact.
Global warming affects us all, and everyone has a stake in this problem and the solutions. The transition to cleaner, more efficient energy is happening all around the world, faster than many people predicted, but it's still not happening fast enough. And that's why we need governments and industry working as hard and as fast as possible to cut greenhouse gas pollution and really accelerate that transition to cleaner forms of energy.
According to the Climate Action Tracker, an independent research group, China remains one of the biggest polluters by far. However, experts say that could change as China continues to shift from relying heavily on coal to shifting its commitment last year to ramping up renewable energy and reducing all greenhouse gas emissions.
We've witnessed a lot of positive actions in China. The government has issued comprehensive guidelines to advance the Beautiful China Initiative, which is a vision highlighting China's path to modernization in harmony with nature. The Chinese government has also made climate a central focus. Using market-based solutions, China continues to improve its national emissions trading system and plans to broaden the coverage of this emissions trading system to encompass even more sectors.
Beyond China, the United States, India, and the European Union are the key players, but experts like those from the Environmental Defense Fund say they need all countries to work together if we want to move forward. For EarthX, I'm Caleb Park.
The American Climate Corps officially kicks off. 9,000 people are being sent across the country to restore landscapes, build solar panels, and take other steps to help guide the country towards a cleaner, greener future. The first of those workers were in the Biden administration's ambitious climate agenda. More than 20,000 young people are expected to join during the program's first year, according to the White House, with new openings appearing on the American Climate Corps job site in the months ahead. And before we leave you, Palm Beach Zoo officials are hoping for a love match. Staffers recently welcomed a female capybara to the facility as part of a breeding program to bolster the population of the large South American rodent. Park officials say the 10-month-old, named Iari, is currently staying in a mixed species habitat while they slowly introduce her to the park's 2-year-old male capybara, Zeus.
They're in a situation now where they can interact with each other, but there's still a barrier between the two. And so once we see a lot of positivity with those interactions, then we'll put them into the same space and hope that love is in the air.
Veterinarians say the animal's gestation period is about 5 months, with an average litter of 4 pups. Zoo officials say they aren't sure when to expect any babies. That will all depend on how long it takes Iari and Zeus to get to know each other. That's it for this edition of EarthX News. Please join us again next week. I'm Christina Thompson.